On June 22nd, 1991, Charles Holden was on his way home from work when he decided to stop at a fast food restaurant near his house in Harrington, Delaware. After grabbing a quick bite to eat, Charles left the store and got back in his truck, and he was about to drive out of the lot when he stopped because there was this man running towards him, waving, trying to flag him down. And when this stranger got close enough, he told Charles that his sister was having a baby and he needed a ride to the hospital, which was about 20 minutes away. He felt bad and said, "You know what, hey, I'll give you a ride part of the way there." Charles drove him approximately 3 miles in the direction he had asked to go before pulling over on the side of the road and telling him, "This is as far as I'm going to take you." But the stranger suddenly became angry and he starts screaming at Charles, "Hand over your keys, hand over your wallet, or I'm going to kill you." Charles turned off his truck, he ripped the keys out of the ignition, and he leapt out of his truck and started running. But as he's running, he turns around and sees the stranger has also leapt out of the car and was now sprinting up to him with a screwdriver in his hand. And so at some point, Charles just stops, he turns around and he puts his hands up. So Charles walks back to the truck with the stranger right behind him with the screwdriver periodically poking him in the back. They finally get to the vehicle, but as soon as Charles sat down, he fired up his truck and sped off before the stranger could hop in the passenger side door. Charles goes back into Harrington, Delaware, and he gets on his street and he's shocked when he sees the stranger who had just tried to kill him is walking down the road right in front of him. At this point, Charles decides he needs to tell police because he doesn't know if this stranger actually knows him, and so he calls 911. And so a few minutes later, an officer showed up at the payphone where Charles was, and they told Charles they would escort him back to his property, and if this stranger was still out in the area, they would arrest him. But before the officer leaves, he asks him if he wouldn't mind doing a quick sweep of his mother's property. She lived right behind Charles on the other side of some bushes. He told the officer her name was Dorothy, she was 70 years old, and she lived alone, and he just wanted to make sure nothing happened to her. So the officer goes into Dorothy's backyard, and right away he can see the back window on the back door has been smashed and the door itself is slightly ajar. And so the officer draws their pistol and they go up and they enter the house. They make their way up the flight of stairs and they find blood at the top of the landing. And they follow this trail of blood and it brings them into one of the bedrooms where a woman is sprawled out on a bed. It was Dorothy. She had been stabbed to death. It would turn out, after Charles had ditched the stranger and sped off without him, the stranger, whose name was Gilbert Cannon, began looking for a place to sleep, and the house he ultimately selected just happened to be Charles's mother's house. After Gilbert broke in through her back door, he saw Dorothy coming down the steps to confront him, and because he was worried she'd be able to identify him, he attacked her with a screwdriver. Gilbert would later tell police he has no idea that this woman, Dorothy, is Charles's mother. The entire night was one big horrible coincidence. Gilbert would plead guilty to the murder and would be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.